All right. Well, that was rather quirky. I didn't time that out well. Senator Pat Toomey, welcome and good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
Let me ask you, in the limited time we have, let me ask you first about the passing of one of your fellow members of the Senate, John McCain.
Well, yeah, obviously we had some time to prepare for this moment, knowing the condition he was in. But it's a great loss. It's a great loss to the Senate. It's a loss to the country. John McCain was a true hero of the old-fashioned sort. He put his country ahead of himself time and again, sacrificed so much during the Vietnam War era, and then served ably and nobly in the Senate. I didn't always agree with him, and we had our share of run-ins. But I always believed, and I still believe, that he was always doing what he thought was best for the country and for Arizona. So, yeah, he'll be missed.
I don't know if you can talk a little bit about, because this seemed to kind of, we had some of our earlier guests mention this too, about the gap between, I don't know if you call it civility, but just how different it is. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean, they're your enemy, or at least that's the way McCain was viewed, or is that how the Senate works?
Well, I think the general tenor of public discourse has definitely become very unfortunate. People are attacked personally, and their motives are attacked. And, I try to look at the substance of the arguments of my opponents, unless I'm given some clear evidence to the contrary. I like to assume that people are advocating what they advocate based on the belief that it's the best outcome. We can disagree about what's good for America, what's good for Pennsylvania, but I really wish there wasn't so much ad hominem attacks and questioning people's motives.
I had a story. I was mentioning some of the political stuff that's going on over the weekend and even into this morning, and I see where, the president was attacking his attorney general again over the weekend. As a member of the Senate who, okayed, and of course Sessions, a former member of the Senate, does that concern you when you see these attacks? What is your reaction to them?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. I think that, for the president to be undermining his attorney general in these very public ways, it's not how I would handle it. If he has a disagreement with a subordinate, he ought to resolve that one way or the other privately. That would be my preference, my approach. But the president is, certainly it's within his authority to decide how he's going to relate to the people he appoints. I happen to think that Jeff Sessions is a very good man, doing a good job under difficult circumstances. I know the president would like to see him step in and intervene and wind up this Mueller investigation, and the president's not happy that Jeff Sessions recused himself in the first place. I think Jeff Sessions had an obligation to recuse himself in the first place. And so anyway, my hope is that Jeff Sessions will stay right where he is, at least for some time, but understanding that
as much as it is his choice.
Well, to the extent that it's his choice,
Right.
that I do think the president certainly has the authority to fire him.
Right.
I think that would be a very bad idea to do that anytime soon. But at some point, no doubt there will be a change in that post, just as there are for virtually all cabinet posts. Very, very few cabinet secretaries serve for an entire presidency. So I'm sure there'll be an evolution there, but I think now would be a very bad time. I think it's best for Jeff Sessions to stay there for now.
Kavanaugh hearings begin today.
Right.
What do you think of those? You're not on the Judiciary Committee?
I am not on the Judiciary Committee, but I will tell you I am a big fan of Brett Kavanaugh. I think he's a very, very talented, very capable guy, a terrific choice for Supreme Court. I think he'll do a great job at the hearings. Today, it'll be mostly speeches by senators who are on the committee. I think tomorrow we'll hear from Judge Kavanaugh, and the rest of the week we'll have the questioning. Unfortunately, many of my Senate colleagues on the other side announced that they would oppose whomever President Trump picked, simply because it was a President Trump pick. I think that's really not the proper way to exercise their responsibilities, but that's up to them. We'll see how they conduct themselves during the hearings, but there's been an all-time record amount of information has been released about Brett Kavanaugh. We have literally hundreds of judicial decisions that he has written. So there is a tremendous amount in the public realm about how he approaches the law, how he approaches being a judge. It's hard to imagine anything that you would like to know and can't learn about. And it's hard to imagine knowing more about how a person approaches the law than we know about Judge Kavanaugh as he goes into this. So I'm very optimistic about his prospects, and I think he'll be a fantastic Supreme Court justice.
Final question, knowing your past with Club for Growth and economic and tax-type issues, the trade, I don't know if you would call it a war or not. What's your assessment of how that's going?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts, and I think it's not always clear. I will say that the announcement of a deal with Mexico has some very encouraging aspects. One of which is it suggests that maybe we're at least not going to see an escalation in this trade war, and maybe we'll see it de-escalate. I do think that Canada has to be part of any agreement between the United States and Mexico, and that it is very good for Pennsylvania and very good for America to have a North American free trade continent. And so it's essential that we preserve that. So it looks as though we might be heading in that direction. Mm-hmm. I have some concerns about some of the provisions that the administration has put in this NAFTA 2.0. But we haven't seen the actual language yet, so I haven't been able to weigh the good features that I know are there.
Does it have to be ratified?
Features. Absolutely has to be ratified by the Congress, yes.
Senator Toomey, I appreciate your time this morning. I know it's a busy day getting back to work after the August recess and all, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
You bet.